What's up, Flooring family? Welcome to the huddle. We're here every Tuesday at 3 p.m. Central, discussing topics that'll help you maintain forward progress in your flooring career. With me, as always, Mr. Daniel and Jose Gonzalez, the Preferred Flooring out of Grand Rapids, Michigan. How we doing, gentlemen?
Good.
Made it.
Hey, well, you're not in a truck driving across Michigan somewhere, so.
No, I just got back actually, so that's why I said I just made it.
So we almost caught you in the truck.
Almost.
Well, you've always pulled it off in one manner or another. I think I've spent a day or two of the podcast in a vehicle myself.
Yeah.
So, all right. So today, episode 52, we're talking about overcoming and managing common installation challenges. So, you know, with a lot of our subject matter here at Go Carrera, we're dealing with, you know, the same real big issues are always going to continue to come up. So talking on the micro issues is always kind of a fun thing to do. And I think that's kind of where we can find those nuggets. So, you know, the challenges and managing those challenges of installation. So let's start with commercial because
that's what
I
all
love.
of us do. Yeah.
And that's what we do the most of. So what are, I'll throw a couple out there that we have found, and you can get as deep as you want, but I think one of the biggest installation challenges that we face as a company from the company side, and I think it also affects our subs and their money, is efficiency. Getting on the job site, things not being ready, you know, moisture issues, or really, you know, the moisture issues you can deal with, but it's really like driving 3 or 4 hours to a job site, having crews show up, and then the area not being ready.
That's never happened. That's never happened before at all, right?
Yeah, only a time or two. So that's a challenge, and I know it's obviously affects both sides, the company and the installer. The installer goes all the way out there, company goes off of the word of the site superintendent or foreman or whomever, you know, sends guys out there, and they go all the way out, they spend their money and time and effort to go out to a job site, and then it's not ready, they can't install. Or I love this one. Oh, that won't take us but an hour to move. You know, we can have that moved in no time, or things like that, or other trades being in the way. And I guess that boils down to this accelerated schedules and things that are happening on job sites. I mean, we got projects where owners are wanting to sign off on warranties and everything. They don't care.
Oh,
Just
man.
like get our stuff in. And so those are the biggest challenges, or the first challenge I'll bring up. And there's some ways around it, and Go Carrera's got some cool features coming out that can help you companies and installers to work through this problem. But you know, initially I've just really been pushing back on our superintendents. I've had to work with our PM team to like realize that just because a GC or a superintendent says, I want you out here on Wednesday, that doesn't necessarily mean you do that. You know, you may say, look, if you're not ready, you know, I want proof that you're ready. That's tough to get. There's some ways. Go Carrera is coming out with a video feature that allow you to link that superintendent in right out of the gate, have them walk it. You can mark up the video as you go and show them what needs completed or done for you to show up.
Phenomenal feature.
Yeah, it's going to be awesome. But in the meantime, while we're waiting on that awesome feature to come out, I demoed it with you guys, and that was a fun time. From one being on a plane to Vegas, I think you were still in Michigan, and I was in Wichita, and we were all collaborating on stuff.
It warranted a phone call right after the podcast was done, because talking about it and visualizing and then actually going through the process was totally different. It was amazing.
Yeah, I might use a podcast just to do, a portion of it to get a little salesy. Not that we don't talk about Go Career, obviously we do, but maybe show that feature and let that get out there a bit. But in the meantime, I think that you have to, if you have to go out there as the company, which is what I've been telling our guys, like, we got to send one of our superintendents out or somebody, you need to save your crew that trip and verify that it's ready yourself in some manner. Right now, for us, that's honestly in person until we launch this feature. We're doing the same thing. We're going out to the job site. What's your guys' approach to that? Because I know you do some work that may be outside, most companies will do work, 2 or 3 hours circumference of their area.
Yeah, I think same thing. We've run into the same scenarios where, yeah, we're ready. And, you kind of got to trust the process, whether it's a direct contract through ourselves or through another company. You got to trust the line of communication and that they're telling the truth. After a few times of showing up and just kind of getting hosed, where you show up with a crew of
It has happened to you.
you show up with a crew of 6, and like you said, oh, it's only gonna take an hour or 2, or what, you guys can start in this 10 by 10 room right here while we clean this up, and show up with 6 guys and 2 trucks of material, and you kind of start making the phone calls, and it sucks to say it like this, but you kind of start asking direct questions and giving information very direct, like, hey, dude, if it's not ready, I'm just letting you know, like, this is what I'm bringing. This is what we plan on doing based off of our conversations and the schedule. If it's not ready and I got to leave, I'm not going to wait 2 hours. I'm going to leave, and I'm going to charge you for the day. I'm going to charge you for the entire crew. It's not fair to them. It's not fair to me. So we've had those conversations.
Yeah, like an hour for them if you got 6 guys is 7 hours for you.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and they understand it. Everyone acts oblivious to it.
Then why do they do it, Jose? Why is it that I have walked onto so many job sites when they say they're ready and it's not ready, and then the best I can tell them is, most of the time we'll just jump in and start helping them move because we don't want to go home. We want to work.
Right.
We're there to work. And it's like, what is this new? It ain't new, but it's getting worse. Like, come to the job, no windows, no HVAC, wanting to sign off on LVT being installed from China. And I'm like, dude, do you know how bad this can be?
It all goes down to years ago. I remember when we used to have, I remember when deadlines were realistic, right? I remember when you had a deadline like, hey, we're breaking ground. We got 18 months for this project. Now, if you go back 15, 20 years ago, a project that took 18 months, they're getting it done in 7 now, from breaking ground to completion and turnover.
They were until COVID happened.
Right, until COVID happened. But it's just I am positive that the generals and the contractors are doing their very best to stay on task and keep the schedule as planned. But it's the same thing, and not to stand up for them, but I know that they're relaying information and things are not getting done in a timely manner by other contractors or trades. And I don't want to say it like this, but me being a subcontractor, they kind of trust other subcontractors to hold up their end of the bargain. Performance from a company who has the majority of the other contractors who are in-house actually perform better. Their projects are, in fact, ready, or they exceed expectations. But if it's a construction management company who's managing other subs and other trades, that's I don't want to say it
Well-
like that, but it's a disaster waiting to happen if one person falls off or if a material is back ordered, a product.
Some of the durations though, like the scheduling you were talking about, I mean, it's almost like there's not been a concerted effort to understand the lead times now on
Yeah.
HVAC and allow for that in your schedule. Like it blows my mind. We do have 3 jobs that we're on long before we should not be on them.
Yeah.
We just
and,
should not. They're willing to sign our paperwork, and a couple of them I think they have. The others are like, well, we're monitoring site conditions and keeping site conditions up to date or up to par with what the specs say. And I'm like, you know, are you keeping them on? Who's monitoring this stuff at night? Like you got 12 hours you got half the hours of the day that no one's there really monitoring it. So
And
it's just frustrating.
Carlos is on LinkedIn. He said about the moving and the hours and stuff. Do we put anything in the contract about charging per day? And I think you can put anything that you want when you send it to them, but they're always going to send you their contract back, and then it supersedes whatever you say anyways.
Yeah, it's always their contract, and you can mark it up, and we do. But most contracts state, that the GC is driving the schedule, and that you agree that you're going to be there when scheduled to perform the work. And it's like the planning before we get there. Because I'll give you an example. I'm doing a job, did a bunch of classrooms, and they spoon fed us half the classroom at a time. There was 8 in this one wing, and it took we couldn't put 6 guys on that. We put one guy and a helper, and it took them all week to lay those 6 classrooms, maybe even 7 days, because it's just like this. Now, it's an out-of-town job. It's still in Kansas, but it's pretty far out. Now I've had this guy out of town to get 400 yards of carpet and maybe 800 to 1,000 square foot of LVT put in. And this crew, they don't want to stay out of town another 8 days straight. So now I've got to transfer in another crew. It's so what we did, I'll tell you how we handled it, is I started just deciding that we'd push back to the GC and say, no, you have it ready this day, and I am coming with 6 guys. I'm not coming with 1 or 2, because they tried that stuff that in this big main huge common area, all carpet tile, and they want us to start in this corner and then kind of move this way, and then they'll move stuff onto it. And I was like, no, just get it ready. When are you going to be ready? I'm not going to be there. That they wanted us there till last Monday. I was like, when are you going to be ready? Like really ready? Well, we had HVAC on since Friday. I said, well, that's good, because we've got several thousand yards of carpet laid in that area. So thank you finally for getting that done. But when are you going to be 100% ready with all the trades out of that area? Well, we can't wait till then. I was like, why? When are you turning it over? July 17th? I said, I'm talking about doing that entire area in a day and a half.
Yeah, right.
Like all of it, base and the entire area in a day and a half. And so we got to set up like that, and we'll see how that plays out. But that's like, it's almost like not being on the job for elongated times as a flooring guy, and then coming in for 2 or 3 days and just banging out 1,000 yards. It almost seems like that. I've been flirting with that a little bit, and it seems like that's working, at least on larger projects. I mean, so that's schedule is my number one, like, pet peeve challenge in my assessment of like installation problems. And then we can get into like actual technical installation problems too, and some other stuff, whatever you guys think. But that's just a tough one for both sides too. It's one that affects you as the contractor and the installers.
it affects everybody. And what you just said there too, that scenario about getting the area done, say 2 days. I know working with the people that we've worked with for years, it's easy for us to negotiate those areas and do that because they know that we're going to complete what we say we're going to complete. If we say it's going to take 2 days, if they give it to me, it's going to take 2 days, we'll get it done in 2 days. It's going to take three, it'll take three. But I know a lot of other contractors have just been burned by other installers, and you know that leaves a bad taste in their mouth, and that's where they're thinking, right? They are, you know, everybody is always a worst case scenario mindset when it comes to putting themselves in a bad spot, and that's where they dwell. So
Risk management.
yeah, and it's the same thing with if we were to hire subcontractors or have our employees, if something goes wrong, you don't ever bank on something going wrong. You bank on everything going perfect. And if something throws a wrench in your schedule for that day and you add an extra day, you got to ask for forgiveness at that point. But
I think it just goes back to the conversation we had a few podcasts back about, you know, communication, right?
yeah,
Because we just started doing work for a GC over here, and it was our first project direct through them. And I started showing up at the meetings. You know, they say they only want you there if it's like 2 weeks out. Well, I started showing up 6 weeks out. They're like, you don't even need to be here right now. I said, I need to make sure that you're going to be ready to go when you say you're going to be ready to go.
yeah.
That's a good point. Maybe get into job meetings earlier. That's a good idea.
And a
So you
familiar
started
face,
going
too.
6 weeks out, or
Yep.
is that literal? That was
Yeah,
Yeah, and they asked me why I was there. I said, because when we get this
'cause
carpet,
my
I'm
job,
trying to start installing it as soon as it gets in.
yeah.
my scope depends on all these other guys and what you're telling them right now.
And then if all else fails, like you're talking about the owners of the sign off, I don't know if they relay all the correct information to the owners of the facilities or buildings, because if you tell I don't know, maybe I'm different. If you tell an owner or tell me that I'm going to pretty much cut the life of a material or potentially cut the life of material in half because I'm trying to rush it, and then I'm not going to get the value out of my investment, I'm probably just going to want to wait a little bit and make sure it's done right. But that's just me.
Well, I just said no to a project where they wanted to put, and I talked to the manufacturer, and it's cork flooring in a hot yoga studio. And they were like, you know what? This is the method that you can use. It's still not warranted, but I've seen it perform and not fail. So I'm like, all right. And then they were like, as long as you don't use the floating system, you'll be fine. And then they came back, hey, they're going to buy their own flooring now. So one, I lost the sale of the material. And then two, they want to put floating in there. And I'm like, no, we're not going to do it. And they just came back with, well, we're never going to use your company. And I said, that's totally fine. It seems like we have different values, and I'm not going to install a floor that I know is going to fail.
Wow. If they only knew you're just trying to prevent a lot of heartache and headache in the future.
Well, when he
There's
first
plenty
talked,
of companies that'll just come throw shit in for you. Why
Right.
come?
well, we were the third company that he contacted, and I'm the one that got the correct system in order to do it right. Everyone else just said they weren't going to touch it. And then as soon as I handed them, this is what's going to perform for you, they were like, no, we want to do it this way. Well,
Yeah.
find someone else to do it that way.
Yeah, so I think that regardless of, you know, as hard as we both of our companies work to maintain relationships and have good communication and stuff, I think it boils down to I think one of the things that can move the needle the most is what you said about going a little earlier job site meetings. You'll get a real good, I think that's a good nugget that comes out of this, is like start going to your job site meetings a little bit earlier than you normally would. I mean, like I said, 2 or 3 weeks out, we may start going, but get there 6 weeks and you can see if the HVAC system's running behind, or if the, you know, and our documents, by the way, that to have someone sign off. One of the things that I've learned through going to trade shows and talking with like, you know, Jeff and some of the other attorneys that show up to these things is send it to the GC. You got like our form requires signature by the GC, architect, and owner. If there's not an architect, there's always a GC and always an owner. And if it happens to be the same, sign it twice. I don't care, right? There's usually more than just one party involved. So we write it up in a way in where we're trying to be very clear with them. And I just give this advice to anybody who, if that's the final straw and you have to. Eventually, what do? Your GC saying, I'll sign whatever you send me. I want you on site next Tuesday. Like contractually, you're obligated to be there when the GC says.
Right.
Yeah.
And so
And-
you send them this document, a few pieces I would advise everybody to have. List every single possible failure that can happen.
Right, and that's where, like, I was talking about before you have a contract, and we're talking about after the contract, because once you're in that contract, it seems like it'd be a little bit easier to be strong-armed into doing something that you don't want, and you just have to make sure that your bases are covered, because you can't really say, well, I'm just gonna walk away from this job because you got a contract.
Yeah, not without breach of contract or not,
Right.
and that's a major issue now. You're in litigation or arbitration. You want to avoid that, or they'll just supplement you and then they'll spend all your money plus
Yeah.
then some
Plus
and
some,
send
yeah.
you a bill for it. So once you sign the contract, you're kind of stuck. And if you get in that situation, like I said, make sure you list every single possible failure point, whether it's gapping, curling, adhesive, seepage, maintenance issues, complete flooring failure, trip hazards, all this stuff we list as potential failures. And then we even list like common, how did I say it? Like the ones that I anticipate happening on your site. Common and most notable failures. And I start listing those, like these are probably going to happen on your job. Just know that these, don't call me to come fix. I'll come and tell you how much it's going to cost to fix, you know, and I put that language all the way through it. So that's just a kind of a sidebar side note. So what other types of deals? We got site conditions and job being ready. What other types of installation challenges?
Well, you did touch on moisture, right? Because that's a
Yeah.
huge thing, and one of the biggest challenges is teaching people how to spot moisture issues, I think, because once you see something underneath, it could look like wet adhesive, but it may not be necessarily even be a moisture issue, right? Because you can have like a plasticizer migration and stuff that'll eat the adhesive too, and it's not necessarily a moisture issue or anything. But baby sister was real proud of herself. She was on a hospital project one time, and there was a bunch of efflorescence and stuff like that, and she caught it. And thankfully that the company that we were working for was like, yeah, let's fix this now so that way we don't have to later. And it was quite a hefty ad, but it got done right. So being able to spot it, and then also talking to your reps, because you need to know the systems to fix it before you, and we touched on this before, right? Don't just present the problem. You got to say, this is the problem, this is the solution.
Yeah. It makes it a lot easier for that, you know, and that moisture issue does apply to residential too. So like we had an issue where we had a situation where there was an add-on, and it was an old garage that they had added a room over and converted it, and this was another remodel, and it sucked to say, but we walked in there and I'm like, was this a garage? I don't know. And then we asked the homeowner, yeah, I think it was. No vapor barrier, so you know it's a garage. They didn't have to worry about it. So he had to drop that bomb on them for the ads too. But it's just putting yourself in a situation to understand that there's educational classes out there and programs to help you dive deep into that so you can spot it a lot easier instead of having to go through a lot of formal testing just to get the science behind it. You say, oh, look at this, I've seen this before, or I know what that looks like. Let's just make sure. We took a couple classes for that. I mean, we take a couple classes for almost everything, but
Well, what are some common signs that you guys like when you talk about moisture? What is the first thing you're looking for when you walk on a job site? You regardless of, you may not be suspecting, but in our field, we're always looking for moisture. So what are some of the key first signs?
So, for me, like walking into a brand new construction site, commercial site, just visually, I do the old man shuffle, right? Feel for imperfections in the concrete as I'm walking and talking, but visually, I look for inconsistencies in the concrete for visual. Knowing, spotting what slabs were poured at different times and what ones were exposed to the elements during the time of the pour and things like that. Like, if you pay attention to that, you can see some of the inconsistencies, which might raise some red flags, and not red flags like, oh, we're going to have to do this, but you're going to ask questions. And some of the people like to answer them, some of them don't, but you will get your answers regardless. If you're asking the GC, but some of the guys around will say, yeah, this is what happened. We were pouring the concrete, the sun was out, it was too hot, and it started, curing on us really quick. We couldn't do it fast enough, or it rained, we were doing it and it started pouring down, it came down, we couldn't cover it on time, or, no roof when we did this one. There's just a lot of different things.
I always try to look at the envelope to make sure that do they have windows, doors, and roof? Is the building envelope closed? If not, you're likely going to have some problem. Then HVAC, and then when you look visually, like, you can kind of tell that darker concrete, and if you're paying attention, I've called it plenty of times walking on a job, and they're like, yeah, we better run some early moisture test on this one. You can just kind of see it all around, puddles here and there. I've seen leaching up onto the sheetrock wall.
Oh yeah.
On primed walls, and you can see it leached up, and I'm like, okay, this has had water at some point, and maybe it's flooded, or it's coming through the concrete and up that drywall or something. And so you start investigating, and the main thing is, if you're wondering at all, you better call somebody as an installer and say, hey man, has this been moisture tested? Like, your crew's going out, like, if this has, what was the reading? Because they can change. So having your crew understand that just because you moisture tested 2 weeks ago, or 72 hours ago, if you're following the guidelines, you're supposed to do it within 72 hours of installation. Well, shit can change in 72 hours real quick too, especially if they don't have proper drainage or something like that, and it is coming through the concrete. We try to look at a lot of those things, but obviously the best thing to do is toss down a moisture test.
Right. And then I do have to explain to them, because a lot of people know now about the RH test, and they think that, all right, this is the only thing you need. But like, when there's I was just came in early to talk to them, and I was like, is there a vapor barrier underneath this? And they were like, no, this was all warehouse space. And I was like, oh yeah, we're gonna need some moisture testing. He was like, oh yeah, we'll just have someone drop some probes. And I said, and you got to do some calcium chlorides too, because you don't understand that you're not going to see moisture vapor unless you cover it in some cases, right? Because then the moisture has nowhere to go. I said, once I put carpet tile on here, it's non-porous, and the moisture is just going to collect underneath. And just educating people about it like that, they actually understood, and they were like, 100%, we'll get it done.
Yeah, because you can have 75% RH and it passes with flying colors, but you can still have high vapor emissions off 75, 80%. You know, so doing both tests, although I admittedly don't do it every time. If the facility looks pretty good, there's a vapor barrier and the RH test comes back at 75, 80, 85, depending on the adhesive. We typically will roll with that. Probably not the best. I got the nod of like, you better go the next step, Mr. Stewart.
To say that we've done it on 100% of them as well, we'd be lying, right? Like you said, there's a level of comfort, and if it's questionable, then yeah, by all means. But if you're going in and you're getting consistent readings and everything's on the lower levels, and you don't feel that there's a need, you can trust your gut a little bit, but just follow all the standards. If you feel you need to do it, then do it. And if you don't say Jose said that on the podcast, or Paul said you don't need to do it if you feel comfortable.
It just goes back to the contracts, and every contract they have it in there that you need to follow the ASTM standards, and they'll straight up put F710 right in anything resilient.
Well, that'll lead to our next challenge, which is installers knowing that ASTM F710 and or reading the installation instructions and really understanding what you're installing. We've had it happen even recently where specialized product happened to be put in a specialized way. You don't just glue the entire area and start laying LVT. It's a wet set adhesive on this particular job, and got out in front of this guy, and it's like, dude, you can only spread what you can install in 30 minutes. It wasn't plain. Like, this is dead. You got to scrape all this up. It's gone. In fact, you got to take up these last 2 rows and scrape that up too, then reapply what you can install in 30 minutes.
Mm-hmm. Well, open time and flash time is very confusing to some people. And
well, the manufacturers don't make it any easier. Some of their descriptions is like between 5 and 75 minutes, and
based on site conditions.
Based on site conditions. Touch the adhesive if it transfers, but not too much. Then
that is exactly how they sounded like in Forbo.
I'm like, dude, just give me some clear direction here.
Little to no transfer, but is it little or is it no? Like
is no okay?
1 line or 2 lines? Like my fingertip is, I can get 5 lines on there, but little to no, like which one is it?
Yeah. So I think the manufacturers make that even more difficult, but open times and staying informed, like the crews, it's hard for a company to then get all the crews informed on stuff that we get to know. I wish there was like, Facebook's terrible for it, but it'd be nice if there was like just a quality forum of like new installation guidelines as they come out, just a thread, and it split between like carpet, resilient, hardwood, and tile. And like when a new tile grout comes in, it's on a bulletin under that forum, and you go in there and you can look at, new product releases, new ways of installing, shortcuts found by experts, that kind of stuff.
Is that what FloorCloud is planning on doing in the future?
I don't know if that, they do a lot of what FloorCloud does really good. The real, like, in my opinion, key value is you get to load in the products that you're doing on the job site. So it'll do all that figuring for you. As far as product releases and things like that, I hope so. They'd be primed to do so in there with all the aggregation of that material data. They would be best suited probably in the industry, at least currently, for that information to be shared. But I tell you, it'd be nice just to have, because I guess you can go, what's an installer going to do? He's going to Google it if he doesn't know. and
What they should Google it.
Yeah.
Whether they do or not is
yeah,
is
we
a different
want them
story.
to Google it if you do not know. We tell them like Google is free, use it. Like
Or
if you
reach
don't-
out. You know, we get calls all the time. Hey, I've never worked with this before. And then, you know, I could say this is what we did the last time, but I still need to look up to see if anything's changed.
Yeah. And when Crystal and I were down in Georgia, I think I brought that question up about a QR code for a live scan on a bucket and immediate updates, but it would be industry wide, right? And I won't say the manufacturer, but they said that their website is updated as everything happens. So in order to find out, you got to go there and check it out. Which is okay, but you know, not everyone's going to do that all the time. But if there were alerts, if there were a way to become a member of that manufacturer and receive alerts to a specific app or anything like that with material updates or changes, that would be great.
well, at the very least, Google it. Like,
Yeah.
I know that sounds pretty simple, but pull out your phone, and
GTS.
Google this. Is that
Yep.
what that means?
Yep.
Google that.
Google
stuff.
that S.
Yeah, good stuff. There you go.
We don't need another Paul mishap. Let me just type it for you guys.
Okay. We won't bring that up.
So, all right. So we talked about site conditions, moisture issues, and kind of identifying those early on. From an installer standpoint, do you guys deliver all your materials to the job site, or do they come and pick up from your warehouse?
Both.
Yeah, both, because we just like you, we have our in-house and then we also have subs. So like yesterday I met someone because we're doing some residential projects. So I met him on site, brought the stuff out there. So that way he can install it today.
Yeah,
But-
so I asked that question because I went through Facebook to find a lot of griping, and the griping that I was just trying to see, like, all right, well, this is a bunch of installers, and this next podcast is on installation challenges. What's being said? Salesman. Now it's heavily skewed residential on most of the Facebook stuff. So salesmen in general selling stuff that they don't know themselves not only how to install, but that it's the right product for the job. Now, I think that's more on residential, because in commercial, as you guys know, you got more like professionals picking it, at least to an extent. An architect or a designer who's been doing it, especially seasoned people, they kind of understand you're not going to be putting carpet on a pool deck or something, you know, like you're not doing these silly things. But salesmen at a residential shop,
especially like if they stay there and they never even visit the client's house or anything.
Man.
that seems to be a pretty big gripe. Salesmen selling
it is.
things that it's not the right fit, and the installer's like, I don't want to install this in here. I don't think it's going to last. I don't think it's going to work. And then you look in the comments and it's everything from walk away. Okay, well, that's those guys I just kind of want to put in a room and say, is that your answer to everything? Just to wipe your hands clean and walk away? I mean, I don't know that that's the best solution, maybe, but then you could call the salesman and they just say install it, and you're like, and you feel like you're stuck between a rock and a hard place then. So, you know, I also understand their side of wanting to just walk away. But the comments go from everything from just walk away to, you know, write a letter stating that you're not comfortable with the installation, send them an email right from your phone. I thought that was a pretty good suggestion. Like, hey, send them an email and say, I just want you to know I'm completely uncomfortable installing this flooring in this situation. I don't think it's the right product from my experience. Per our conversation earlier, you told me to continue on anyway. I just wanted this to be noted that I am doing so with, you know, not rioting, but like great
Well,
prejudice.
And right, and making sure that you communicate with the sales team before you communicate with the homeowner or end user is really good too, because maybe there's something there that they didn't know they overlooked, and they can find some resolve right away before everyone goes, oh, this material, blah blah blah, I can't do this crap, because then you're ruffling feathers you don't need to ruffle. It's about professionalism.
Yeah, guys. I mean, you know the old saying,
Um,
loose lips sink ships. I mean,
Yeah.
just griping about it on site for everybody to hear isn't the best solution either. Call your salesman or your project manager, whoever back at the
Yeah.
company, and talk it through with them. But it looks to me like there's almost this feeling, it seems like they're truly between a rock and a hard place. Like the materials on site, the homeowner's out of the house. It's the only day you're going to do it. You go tell the homeowner you're not going to do it. You've just caused a shit storm, for lack of a better word. They almost feel forced. And I thought that at least putting your reluctancy to do that project in writing and sending that to your salesman is at least put some level of risk management for the installer. So I think that's a good thing to do. Like if it ain't right and you know it ain't right, voice your opinion. And that way you have some level of protection if something was to go wrong.
And also another thing too is like early on in our careers, I started being proactive. Once I hit a couple projects where there was information that was left out or no one knew, or the salesperson had no knowledge of, I started being proactive and asking those questions. Well, what about this area and this area right here? And why are we doing it with this method and not this? Do they understand that this might happen? And then people kept telling me, like, you ask a lot of questions. I'm like, well, I hope you're taking notes, because this should be your template for the next project. So that way I don't have to ask you these questions. You have the
I
answer.
hope you're taking notes so you learn the next time.
Yeah, and seriously, that was a real conversation, and I wasn't doing it to be an ass. I was doing it because I didn't want to show up to someone's home or someone's business on a project ready to rock, and then as soon as I'm there 10 minutes in, have to say, excuse me, Mr. Homeowner, excuse me, Mr. Business owner or Mrs. I got to step outside for a minute. Like, they're going to understand the body language, right? Because you're going to get in there. Nobody hides that. Nobody walks in and goes, oh, this looks great. Hey, I'll be right back. They walk in, they go, hey, oh no. Oh, excuse me. I'll be right back.
I'll be back in a sec.
Yeah. So it back to the communication thing, right? It all falls back to that same thing. And are you dealing with a salesperson who's 10 years in, 20 years in, or 2 years in, right? Yeah, salesperson is somewhat your audience as well. You have to know who you're dealing with and know
It matters.
Yeah. Yes, it does matter. 100%. Ex-installer never installed a day in their life. Like we work with a gentleman, Bob, known him for 25 years now, and ex-installer, like that dude, he is on it. And if he forgets something, it's very rare.
But he's also that salesman that if he does forget something, he's like, just do it right, I'll cover it.
Yeah. Oh,
and then
that. Yeah.
His jobs are real nice because he's either got like 200 extra yards or he's 2 boxes short.
It's not that bad, Bob. If you're tuning in, it's not that bad.
So the what other challenges? Because you got your day in, day out like technical stuff, and I think that's really boils down most times to training and equipment. Do you have the right training to do it, and do you have the right equipment to do it? And if both of those boxes are checked, really the bulk of the problems are what we're talking about now.
Manpower. You don't ever know when someone's going to have an accident, someone's going to be sick, or someone's going to have an emergency. That's always going to be a challenge, right? And the smaller the company, the more it affects you. Because if you have 5 people working in your company and you lose one person, you just lost 20% of your workforce. If you look at it like that, and it's just one of the things that you have to learn how to deal with. Like, I think I still have a hard time dealing with that, but learning to, you can only control what you can control, right? Like, hey, griping about it for 2 hours in the morning and making a big deal about it isn't solving anything. You have to set that aside and be part of the solution, not the problem, and figure it out.
Yeah, so do you have means of when somebody gets hurt or, gets sick one day, what's your first thing? We
Pad
still,
up. Pad
I mean,
up.
you would do the
I-
same thing sometimes.
Yeah.
I still
Pad
did,
up.
I was welding a stage last week, I'm gonna be installing carpet tomorrow. We employ 40 some people at my company and have 60, 70 subs on top of that. But still not, partially because I still actually enjoy the stuff. I know that a lot of them, I still do, but the
it is
other
nice.
part of that is I enjoy teaching, so I'll have my a bunch of my leads with me on this job and just teaching them, making sure they understand how to properly set up a job, because I'm not fast because I can cut faster than another guy.
Mm,
I'm fast because I know how to set up a job to where it flows in a manner that everybody stays busy, very fluid like.
yes.
That's what I
Systematic.
like doing when I walk on a job, is make sure that it's set up and, patching, starting here and there, pulling out tape measures, starting to put down lay lines while the patch is going down, and doing things in a sequence that ends up getting the job done faster. But so proper setup of the project is where I like to, but yeah, just sometimes you gotta knee pad up. I do think communication's another piece to that. It's like, call it like you said, and it's funny how a lot of these things go back to good communication. But if you're not gonna have a guy because someone's sick and you can't, backfill them with another guy, well then what do you do other than call your superintendent and your project manager or your homeowner and you're like, hey, we're gonna be down a couple of guys. We'll look at the whole schedule and the entire team and say, what jobs are not in trouble at all, and can we pull from
Yes.
and stay and maintain over there, but not maybe knocking it out of the park to knock it out of the park over here. So sometimes just communication and scheduling, on large construction sites, pushing it a day or two is not the end of the world. Pushing Miss Jones' kitchen that she moved out of.
Yeah. Well, we actually had one of those this week, right? Last week.
Last week.
Our guy that we had scheduled to do the carpet had a death in the family that he had to deal with, and they put him a day behind. He ended up losing a day of work, and he got put a day behind, and he was trying to stay on task, but he couldn't catch up. And it's just like, at that point, it's like, hey, dude, don't worry about it, man. We got it. Calm, collected. And then as soon as he hang up the phone, it's like, oh man, I don't know how we're gonna do it, but you know what? Baby sister,
She's a miracle worker sometimes.
she stepped up, and we got everything done. Everything went smooth. It pushed us a little bit behind to start the week yesterday, but I went in the field yesterday, and today I got put behind by a family emergency this morning. So,
well, there's always something going to come up. That's why you
Yeah.
got to be skilled at these problem resolutions, because I mean, the fact is every week, I would venture to say every single week we have somebody sick, not show up, some manner of something not going the way you planned it to go, right? So we got to just be experts from our side of the coin, from the company side at solving those problems and moving guys around like puzzle pieces, almost like chessboard, to where's your best next move.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I guess at the end of we're talking about installation challenges though. Do you feel like what do you feel like is the biggest problem you would like if you could build the just perfect subcontractor, what does that subcontractor look like, and how is it that their approach addresses some of these issues we've talked about? Does that make sense? Like, if you
Yes,
could
it
build the
does.
perfect sub, what are they doing that solves a lot of your problems?
Showing up when things are scheduled.
Punctuality, um, willingness to continue their education, so that way you don't have to babysit all the time, right? And make sure they have the information. You trust that they have the information. Um, some sort of middle of the ground, higher level of professionalism. Someone who you trust to have great communication on site with clients, with you, with your staff, able to articulate issues. I mean,
So
I mean-
communication, professionalism,
yeah,
from a, uh, maybe a hard skill or more of a, you know, like equipment, the right
yeah,
tools,
yeah, that
and
goes-
obviously the right training. So training tools, communication, professionalism.
yeah. And some of the other things are blanketed in those right there too, like Daniel said, reliability, you know, punctuality, stuff like that is kind of blanketed in the
You
professionalism.
know, that probably gets blanketed into actually caring about your customer and who's
Yeah,
gonna be,
yes.
who's walk. And you can tell your customer in flooring by who's gonna be walking on the damn thing when it's all said and done. And caring about their experience on the floor you installed, so. You know, that they're gonna be on it on time. Some of the best subs I know are the ones who actually care that the owner's gonna get in their building on time,
Well,
you know? That
You know,
that doesn't
word of
just
mouth.
care about getting your job done for you, but they actually care about the owner getting in on time, the school starting on time. They feel the pressure with you that is exuded onto you as the company from your general contractor or your homeowner. They feel the pressure with you without you having to apply the pressure. You know what I'm saying? Like that guy
Yes.
that just gets it. He gets on site. He knows he lost a day. He calls you, hey man, I lost about a half a day because of, you know, this, they cut these saw joints in on an 8x8 grid instead of 12x12. So I had 3/4, you know, 30% more saw joints to patch, but I'll catch you back up tomorrow. That kind of guy that just gets it, that's been the most beneficial. And he seemed that those types of crews seem to be naturally more equipped and more trained.
Yeah, and
Just-
that goes that right there adds on to how Daniel is, how we used to be is, you know, an hour today saves 3 hours tomorrow, right? And if you look at a project where you're there for a month, that 3 hours that you save every day or 4 times a week, 4 days a week adds up at the end of the project, because a deadline's a deadline. You can't make up 24 hours in an 8-hour day.
In 24 hours.
Yeah, yeah. Right. Yeah. Yeah. And so any advantage an installer or installation crew could get by saving time for the next day is super beneficial. And I know it's hard to view it that way as an employee. I mean, I've always viewed it that way as an employee anyway, but I know that we probably cut from a different cloth, but it's
Investing your time and
Right.
not spending it, right? It sounds
Right.
like, you know, you invest that 1 hour and you get any investment, you expect a return on your investment, an ROI. Well, if your ROI is 3 hours, like your example that Daniel had, well, there you go. Invest that hour because it's going to pay you 3 hours back every day, or maybe an hour a day on a week-long job. You just got given back 7 hours of your life almost. So
and not only that is, hey, you work a couple long days, Monday through Thursday, Fridays ends up being a shorter day because you save some of those hours. You know, and for some people, the sooner you get a project done, the sooner you can roll into another one. I don't
Yeah.
know very many successful individuals or installers that like to work 3 days and take 3 days off, right? I don't. Or
I was
take-
told by a guy last week that was in my office here at Go Carrera that, you know, down south, they like to work 3 to 5 hours a day and fish on Fridays. And I'm like, how do you get any work done?
we worked in Oklahoma and Iowa on some commercial projects long ago. And we went there and with a small crew, me, Daniel, Charles, who's with us again, and some other installers, and we went there and banged out these movie theaters like boom. The local guys came up to me and said, "Can you guys please stop working like that?" And I thought it was a joke. And I was like, what are you talking about? Because of you guys, they're going to expect us to do that. And we're not trying to do that. And it's like, well, I'm from Michigan, dude. There's a reason they called me here from Michigan. And I'm trying to get back home to my family. So the sooner I get these jobs done, the sooner I get to go home. And I'm not doing anything out of the ordinary. I'm just working like what I feel is normal. And that was a rather odd conversation because he was serious. And I was like, oh. And that was a long time ago.
That was
so,
like 20 years ago.
yeah, I still remember it like it was yesterday.
That's still a great story. Hey, dude, could you slow down? You're
It
giving
was
us a
it
bad
was
name.
it was a real conversation.
That's funny. Well, I think that our time together every single week always turns into, diving deep on stuff that kind of has a similar tone.
Yeah.
And why is that? It's because the big issues are still the big issues. The big issues of these accelerated schedules and trying to get work done in less time and lower budgets and just all this constraint causes all this heartache, really. I mean, if you have ample time to get, most GCs know if you gave them like a bid and we're going to award the job to the GC based on who we think is most reasonable on their time frame, not the fastest, but the closest to actual reason. And that's how you awarded bids. Then a GC could put the pieces in. They know how to build a building. The problem is they agree to these condensed schedules that these owners want from them, which I love all you owners out there, but at the same time, when you constrain those schedules, I had a conversation with a very large client of mine in the same regard. And we do a ton of work directly with them. And then we do some work through a GC or several GCs that on bigger projects for him. And he pulled me aside. I had given a talk actually on concrete moisture at IFMA, which is like the management people. You guys probably have a local IFMA chapter there. You might look into it if nothing else, but it's IFMA. So it's like the International Facility Management Association or something like that. Anyway, I was given a talk about concrete moisture, and my client I had never met, he was the head guy at the facility, came up and said, "Hey, I never met Stuart." And we started having a conversation. He's like, you kind of had a little bit of a struggle on that last job because I'm not used to having any problems with your company. And it's like, well, I understand, but just so you understand, I won't throw anybody under the bus. But when you have someone else in the middle, like a general contractor who dictates our schedule, you're not getting the same level of what we provide you when we're working directly with you, because we tell you we're going to be there on this date and we could be there on this date. There's nothing in our way from being there and performing the job the way we see fit. But when we get to a job that has a GC involved and someone's in the way and we can only do this little area, or we can only work for 2 to 3 days, then we got to leave. Well, then the GC calls and wants us back they call on a Monday and they want us back there on a Tuesday. Well, we can't get the same crew that started the job. And it's like, it brings a lot of other dynamics. So I just wanted you to understand that. So I explained that all to them, but those are real life problems that we're always going to have to be masters at communication, at problem solving, and being agile. I think we just have to be good at it,
Gotta be like
I don't see
water.
those really big problems changing overnight.
I don't think any of the big problems will ever change overnight, even if you're prepared for it the night before.
Yeah.
Every GC is going to be a little bit different. Everyone's going to react a little bit different. Not everyone is always going to see it from our perspective, and we're not always going to see it from theirs. And I really enjoy working with the companies and the individuals that we've had the pleasure of knowing for a decade or more. Because I don't want to say we don't get our way, but we come to an agreement a lot sooner, a lot quicker, and we come
But you're heard.
right, and we come to an understanding. And yes, even though you can't really hear my voice, but they really hear the words, right? And they understand the systems now, and we appreciate everyone for the return business and understanding of what we're trying to accomplish.
Yeah.
In our industry.
I mirror that same to all the clients we've gotten to work with, you know, but to maybe piggyback a little bit, you know, all that stuff, all those variables, every job site's different, every project's different with a different GC. Hell, you can have the same GC with a different PM and different super, and it's a whole new experience, you know? So all those things, all those variables are always there. It's what I love and hate about the construction industry in general. I love the fact that not every day is the same, but sometimes I hate the fact that not every day is the same. You know, it's like, why can't I have just an easy day today? Well, because every single day in the flooring industry in particular, but in construction is a new day with a new set of problems to solve. So, you know, if you don't like problems, this isn't the industry for you. You got to like to find and resolve problems, I think.
Yeah,
You
be
know.
ready for a challenge. That's really and you know,
that
there's
that
still
makes
more
a
good days.
good installer too.
There's still more good days than bad days, though. I will say that, even though it doesn't seem like it when the bad days hit, the good days still far outnumber the bad days, everyone, whether
Amen.
you admit it or not.
Yeah, I agree. Well, gentlemen, we're at 4 o'clock, believe it or not.
You mean 5 o'clock?
5 o'clock somewhere.
We did
So we
go
burned through our hour. Just to recap, good communication was a big part. If you're an installer, showing your professionalism by being on time, you know, being dependable. What is dependable? It means people can depend on you. If I
And like
need
you
you,
said,
I can depend on you.
actually caring about the client, and the client isn't necessarily always the person that you're working directly for. It's the person that's the end user that's going to be using whatever you're putting down.
Yeah, not just the guy that's paying you or the company that's paying you, but
100%.
who's going to be using that space. You care about them, you'll pretty much do a good job, because I mean, you can get through a lot of stuff if you're caring about the right stuff, you know, the right things. So yeah, and you know, I can't say it enough. When you guys brought up communication, that solves a lot of problems. And Link with Go Carrera, if you haven't seen it and you're in the audience, you're going to be blown away when we start demoing and showing video of this stuff. It'll tremendously help with the communication piece. I've got a few more rounds that I got to do with you guys. I want to do a couple more, show you some things we've tweaked. So we've got a few more tests with everybody, but yeah, I'm excited to roll that feature out to everyone and hopefully save everybody some time and money. So if you're watching us on YouTube, consider giving us the like and subscribe. I know we're not talking about AI all the time, although we did get into that last week. We're not necessarily talking about the most interesting subjects on the planet, but we are talking about other people, which may be the most interesting. So, you know, we're talking about tradesmen and women who put food on their table by putting in, you know, by using the skills in their hands and the talent in their brain. And so I think all of our mission here is to elevate the tradesmen, you know, and what they do for all of us. So the building you're working in, the house you're sitting in, the car you drive is likely done by a skilled person. And so value what they give to our society and value what they give to you and your family. So with that, we'll sign out. You guys got any last words?
No, thanks everyone for joining all the time. We get a lot of the same return people on live and stuff like that. So
actually I have a question just to throw it out there for people to answer. What can sales team who give you guys the projects do better on their end to make sure that your checklist is checked and marked for what you expect? I would like to see some ideas. Maybe we can use
Yeah.
that in the future.
Throw it in the comments, and if you guys have any suggestions on topics or things you'd like us to discuss or bring an expert on, we can do that as well. But if you have anything that you'd like to see, tag us in your group, tag the guys in your Facebook group about a issue. We might just post this as a question, what topics on the Facebook, on our Facebook page, and maybe throw it in the groups as well. But if you have any suggestions for topics or things you'd like for us to go over, even if it's very specific on a product, on how to install a certain product, even if we don't know, we can get you the right resource and get you guys plugged in. So reach out to us if we can help, and we will see you guys next week.
All right, see ya.
All right,
Go-
see you guys. Thank you.